Hello, good morning. Welcome to Gaming Insight Daily for Tuesday, June 17th, 2025. I'm Steve Saylor. This is your daily gaming show of gaming news, accessibility news, or updates about my life. I've got coffee in my Minions mug today. Almost screwed up my intro, but it's fine. A little bit of housekeeping. If you missed the announcement yesterday, I will be streaming this Friday. Now that sounds like, you know, what do you mean? Why is the announcement you're streaming? You stream all the time, Steve. Well, this actually is going to be a very special stream because technically this week is the 5th anniversary of The Last of Us Part 2. And if you know me for a long time, you've been a part of this channel, you know how much The Last of Us means to me as someone who helped consult on it, but then also I went viral because of it, and it literally changed my life. It's a moment in my life that I will never forget, and since it's the 5th year anniversary, I have not played The Last of Us Part 2 story since I reviewed it back in 2020. So I will be streaming me playing The Last of Us story once again, but I will not end stream until the game is complete. Now, I looked at howlongtobeat.com to see how long it's going to take to be able to play the game. Apparently, it's going to take 22 and a half hours. That's not including any of the side quests, any of the completionist stuff. I'm not going for any of that. I am going to try to, like, not necessarily speed run it, but basically try to be able to get as far basically, I don't want to end stream until I beat it. So am I going to be up for 22 and a half hours plus? Yeah, probably. That's why I'm doing it on a Friday going into a weekend. So, so if you want to see all the hilarity that's going to ensue, tune in this Friday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/Steve Saylor. I would do it on this YouTube channel as well, but unfortunately YouTube, when you're streaming, can't go longer than, I think, 10 to 12 hours. So I have to basically do this on Twitch instead of on YouTube. So sorry about that. But we will be streaming on twitch.tv/Steve Saylor. So make sure to follow me there, and you can be able to join in starting at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, let's jump into the news because we got two news stories that are similar that will lead into a larger topic that I want to talk about today. If you've clicked on this video, you probably know exactly what the topic I'm talking about. But we'll just jump into it. So first up, we have a news story from IGN written by Vicky Blake. Claire Obscure Expedition 33 fans hope future improvements include quick save, photo mode, and more swimsuits for Gustav. That's not, I know that doesn't sound like, wait, what the heck are you talking about? Just bear with me here. Claire Obscure Expedition 33 developer Sandfall Interactive is currently exploring a wide range of future improvements, end quote. In a social media post shared on the game's channels, the team said these improvements in a social media post shared on the game's channels, the team said these improvements, quote, from accessibility features to new content on all sorts of bits and bobs we're actively assessing, end quote, will also include expanded localization options. Thanks from Eurogamer. While we don't have specific timelines or confirmed languages to share just yet, the team added, we wanted to let you know that it's very much on our radar. They added the we. I did not add the we. I would have added the we, because I think that it is very exciting. Because of this, from accessibility features, Sandfall is going to be adding some more accessibility into Expedition 33. It doesn't have a lot. It does have an accessibility menu, but it does not have a lot currently. And that was kind of like my biggest sort of hold up from trying to be able to continue forward into the game, because I'm still in Act 1. And it is harder for me to be able to continue forward because I basically found a boss that I thought I could be able to beat, but turns out it's an optional boss that I have to basically go back and get level up, and so I can get better later. Didn't realize that until several frustrating hour long later. But then also it is very difficult to be able to navigate the world as well. I found that was kind of difficult. And then just trying to be able to find the timing of the dodges and parries as well. So there is some accessibility improvements that I would love to be able to see, including a screen reader or navigational assistance if there is any. I don't know whether or not these accessibility features are going to be added, but it is good to see that Sandfall is looking to be able to add accessibility after the game has launched. So very, very cool. Next story we have, this is actually a Blue Sky post from Compulsion Games, makers of South of Midnight. They have the Weavers update with 1.3.0 is now live. In this update, we've addressed a number of bugs and thanks to popular demand, added a pet the dog mechanic. You can now pet both of Bo's bloodhounds, who are gentlemen, by the way, in Chapter 5. And you can see, oh, look at that dog, look at those pets. Look at those pets. Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, that's those are nice pets. Read the full patch notes here, and this is actually they're posted on the Steam community page. So you've got they fixed some lighting issues, light and shadow flickering in cutscenes on low, medium, and high shadow settings. Menu and user interface, they fixed an error where the jump and jump from ledge actions could be mapped to the same input. Gameplay added pet the dog mechanic in Chapter 5. I will say that is an accessibility feature. Petting the dog is absolutely, because accessibility is for everybody, so everybody deserves to be able to pet the dog. Accessibility, various menu narration text readout fixes. Fixed chapter relay option not being narrated. Fixed menu narration reading pop-up button options with their full coding names. Fixed the first boot auto configurer pop-up not being read by the menu narration system. Improved the readout text for the quick confirmation pop-up. Fixed menu narration reading order to read the item name before number. Accessibility color options are now read out by their proper color names. And also added subtitles for Kushima's cabaret show, which is Rue's song. That was one that I remember I pointed out in my review. And I'd say that again. I never think that basically people are like the studios watch my reviews and then basically fix the things that I suggest. I never think that. I never think that. That's why, like, the only reason why I mention is because I know probably some folks probably think that that's the case. It is not the case. I could probably guarantee that they did not see that, but they probably saw a bunch of feedback from disabled players that basically saw that there was no subtitles for Rue's song. If you played the game, there is I'll just minor spoilers, but you do get up onto a stage and you basically start dancing with Rue as Rue sings a song. Now, if you know South of Midnight, you know that music is a big part of the game, including that there are several songs that are played during each section or each kind of main story mission of the game, and it's a big part of just the immersion of the world that you're in South of Midnight. And part of the main story is being told in Rue's song, and unfortunately that was not subtitled in the game. So I'm glad to see that the base of that patch notes, which is now live, that it will include that, including all of the other menu narration fixes that it adds and fixes for accessibility. So now if you notice that basically these two stories seem similar, that they are accessibility updates for two games that are currently out, and that one is already added as a patch. The patch is live. You can be able to download it now. You can be able to get those narration fixes and the subtitle fixes in South of Midnight. So if that was something that blocked you, go in and you can be able to try it out for yourself. But then also to see Claire Obscure Expedition 33 talk about specifically in their social media post, which I'll open up on Blue Sky. This is from the Expedition 33 account. Bonjour. That's such an American way of saying bonjour. Bonjour. We currently are exploring a wide range of feature improvements from accessibility features. That's the first thing they mentioned in their post. And I wanted to talk about this for a second, mainly as sort of a jumping on point to talk about this topic, in that it is never too late to add accessibility to games. We often talk about when it comes to designing for accessibility, when you're kind of in that production phase of building a game, that the best time to be able to add accessibility is very early in production. There's a practical reason for that, because oftentimes, not necessarily there's a complaint, but there is concern about people power, resources, and time and cost factor that goes into adding accessibility into a game. The longer you wait to add accessibility, the more resources, people power, time, and potential money that gets added to the production. That essentially, while at the point where you're kind of not necessarily running on a limited amount of funds, but you are running on limited time. You are running on limited people power at that point, because there's a lot of things that need to be fixed. So the longer you wait to add accessibility, or to start adding accessibility, the cost and the resources do go up. So we recommend to start adding accessibility early on, so that throughout production it can essentially be budgeted. It can be managed. It can be time could be managed, resources could be managed, people power can be managed, to be able to include accessibility as they're building the game, so that throughout the entire production, by the time it's done, that they would have added, that a studio could add a bunch of accessibility without really overtaxing or adding extra onto their time, resource, and budget. So yes, that is always the best time to be able to add accessibility. But do you know what the second best time is? Anytime. Yes, in some cases, like I said, time, resources, and cost can increase the longer you wait to add accessibility near the end. However, it is never too late to add accessibility into games, going from later in production to even post-launch. The reason being for that is that if you are committed to updating and supporting a game past launch, and you see feedback from disabled players wanting more accessibility so they can play your game, it kind of encourages you to be able to add more accessibility into your game, because you are not only basically updating the game for current players, but you're also enticing new players to jump into a game, because they see, oh, they actually added this accessibility. I can actually go in and play it now. Case in point, and I've used this analogy or this story before, or this example before, so I apologize if you've heard it talked about it several times. But for those who don't know, The Outer Worlds, we're about to see Outer Worlds 2 come out. Hopefully this will have the same better improvements for accessibility there. But when The Outer Worlds came out, there was a small text within the game, pretty much throughout the entire game, including from dialogue choices to menus to the HUD, to everything in between. And so one developer on the team, on Obsidian, decided to go in and add a text slider into the settings. It basically used the default font size, basically that was 0, and increased it by a factor of 10. I can't remember what the percentage was, whether it was like 200%, I think probably was the font size, or the final largest font size. But they were able to do it in an afternoon, and then spend the next, was able to convince the higher ups, or at least his managers, or his or her managers, they were able to include that, spend the next 2 or 3 months fixing the bugs and UI problems that the larger text size caused, because now again you're now adding in accessibility later, so there is some things that were locked in the beginning of the production process, which was the UI design, that now had to be fixed to be able to accommodate the new text size. So it took about 2 or 3 months to be able to add it, but in the first official patch of the game, that text size slider was added. And to go back to my earlier point, because that text slider was added, I then was able to go in and actually be able to play the game, and that's it. And it definitely is high up there as one. I recognize that it is an amazing game. May not be necessarily one of my favorite games of all time, but it is very good. It is definitely very good, and I am looking forward to Outer Worlds 2, and hopefully it'll be improved in accessibility, because Avowed actually did include a lot of accessibility into the game, so hopefully there'll be at least as much, or if not more, into the Outer Worlds 2. And so if you caught on, you noticed that update was added after release, after receiving feedback from disabled players, or just from players in general, that there was it was really small, the text was really small in the game. So And also as well, another example, Spider-Man 2 had the same thing. Now, granted, yes, they would have loved to have been able to include some the accessibility that was missing from the launch. Like they wanted included at launch, but they had to wait till later, and it took a little bit longer to be able to add everything in there. But they were able to, and we're now seeing Clair Obscure Expedition 33, which did not have a lot of accessibility. But they are committed to be able to add more accessibility features. They didn't say what just yet, which is fine. They don't want to overcommit to basically saying this is what we're looking at or this is what we're adding. Because what if they are now unable to, just based on the engine or based on the what they were able, how they basically customize that engine to work, or if it breaks the game in any way. So they can't say about what's going to be added, but they're looking at it. South of Midnight already had decent accessibility. Actually was able to add to update with a new patch, obviously adding more accessibility and fixing some of the accessibility bugs that was in the game originally. So when we say to build it, like, it's never too late to add accessibility, we truly do mean that. Yes, it would be great to be able to see it at launch. Yes, like we would love to have been able to have that being added on early in production. But if regardless of where you are, accessibility is a journey, not necessarily an end destination. Yes, we see the end destination as something that's fully accessible, but unfortunately you can't get to a point where every game is going to be 100% accessible. 100% accessibility just does not exist. But there are ways to be able to fill that disability spectrum as much as possible. And hopefully we'll get to a point where a lot more games are accommodating for that. And the reason why that it's harder to be able to get to 100% accessibility is because games are different. Every single game is different. And what accessibility that works in one will not work in the other. It's just how game development is. It's how art is. Art is different for every person. So it's same as human variance. Human variance, like one person may like a game, one person may not. That's two different experiences that are valid, regardless of what game it is. Same with accessibility. There are some accessibility that works and some accessibility that doesn't. It's valid. Case in point, Last of Us Part 2, one of the most fully accessible games we have out there. My friend Grant, award-winning gaming journalist, could not play The Last of Us Part 2 on console because he couldn't hold the controller. Now he can play it because it was also added on PC, and he also, case in point, also for other disabled players, now that the PlayStation has an Access controller, they could be able to potentially be able to play that too, if you're not able to hold a standard DualSense controller or DualShock controller if you're playing on PS4. And that was because of updates to the game being re-added to also new platforms. Adding new platforms opens up an opportunity to be able to add more accessibility, and even just by default, by moving from console to PC, you are making it more accessible for motor disabled players, because there's a lot more options for motor disabled players, for, I guess, hardware, specifically for hardware accessibility, whether it's keyboard and mouse, additional controllers, eye tracking, like all that stuff can be added onto PC. So when a game is included on PC or gets released on PC, that becomes more accessible to disabled players. And the disabled players they are turned into new customers. That's the other thing, is that when you add accessibility, it creates new customers. It basically opens it up so that more people can be able to play. They see the thing that I definitely needed this. Now I can be able to go out and buy it and play it. So by adding accessibility at any given point, it's going to increase sales. It may not be a huge amount. I don't know, because it's one of those that's like it's hard to be able to kind of like stand out in marketing anyways. That's a whole other thing with the gaming industry that's hard enough to do at a certain point. However, I do see that with both Clair Obscure Expedition 33 and South of Midnight, I can guarantee that there's probably going to be definitely some decent amount of sales from that. I might actually be able to, because I'm playing it currently on Game Pass, but I might actually be able to go and purchase the game knowing that accessibility is going to happen. That will have caused a sale for Expedition 33. Not to say that they need that one sale to be able to make it big, because they've already sold, I think like 3.3 million. They made a joke about it. It was like 3.3 million units sold within 33 days. I think it's awesome. So I will gladly add that another purchase into there. But And there's also, if you want to go into even the technical reasons as to when is it like anytime is that like you're able to add accessibility. Yeah, like it just depends on kind of like where you are in the production pipeline or whether or not your engine is open to be able to include that kind of stuff into it. Because a lot of developers decide to be able to add or create their own bespoke engine, which is fine. It's not to say that you can't do that, but it is a little bit more difficult, obviously, to be able to include new things into it if the engine just won't allow it. So a developer may need extra time in order to be able to include accessibility, because as they're building the game, they're technically also building the engine for it as well. So there's like, I understand the reasons as to why they would probably want to be able to make sure the game runs before they can technically think about adding accessibility. That's one reason of many, but I can see like that there are definitely reasons as to try to find ways to be able to, or find a perfect time to be able to add accessibility. The perfect time is obviously early, but the second perfect time is anytime. Because it's just good. It's just a good thing to do. And even post-launch, if you're committed to supporting the game post-launch, whether that's 6 to 8 months after the game launches, or even a year or longer, if you decide to include DLC or expansion passes or what have you into a game, there is always opportunities to be able to include accessibility. So don't think that, oh, well, we missed it at launch, we can't add it, we'll have to worry about the next one. That's only if you move from one project to another. But also as well, another benefit that adding accessibility at any time will allow you to do is that you learn from it, so that when you move on to the next project, those learnings are there so that you can be able to know when to add it properly into production, so you don't come across the same headaches as you did before as you're trying to figure out how to be able to include it. Now you can be able to say, oh, now I know, okay, if I did this back, like you got to look back on the production and be like, oh, if I added this then, it would have made it solved a lot of issues. So you go back, when you go to the next project, you know when to add it. You know when to start including that accessibility feature. And then you can also learn and grow from that to add even more accessibility. That's why we talk about that when we look at studios that include accessibility for the first time or are continually adding accessibility. It is a studio that we look out for. Last year, there was a lot of studios that added accessibility into their games for the very first time. And now they are on disabled players' radars as potential studios to look out for adding accessibility. So, and case in point, again, I go back to the Naughty Dog example. Last of Us Part 2 didn't just pop out of a bubble. It literally was a growing process, because there was a disabled player that talked to a Naughty Dog developer saying that they could not play Uncharted 3. There was a blocker that basically prevented them from being able to play, and they were already later in production in Uncharted 4. So what did Naughty Dog do? They took the feedback and they were able to include one of the very first accessibility menus in the industry. Yeah, it didn't have much, but it was there, and that was a start. Being like, oh, Naughty Dog is looking to accessibility, to the point where their next project after that was Last of Us Part 2, and then they basically became one of the most fully accessible games of all time. So it's case in point. It's never too late. Because, yeah, it would have been great to be able to add accessibility to early on in production of Uncharted 4. But they did it. They added as much as they could by the end. To the point where then their next project, they took those learnings, they took that information, they took that feedback, and then basically included it as part of the production for Last of Us Part 2. And I can guarantee that there was probably a huge, large part of the audience for The Last of Us Part 2 that was disabled players. I've heard many times of people saying that they bought PlayStation 4s so they could be able to play Last of Us Part 2. So anyway, that's sort of my thoughts. If you have any questions or any comments about this topic, please let me know in the comments down below. Hopefully I was able to explain at least a little bit that, and I wanted to, if you're a developer, and I want to encourage you, it's okay to yes, it'd be great to be able to make your game fully accessible. The way I always say it is start small. Start with whatever you can, whatever you feel like you're able to add in there, because that learning will always carry with you throughout your entire development career, but then also from project to project, so that you can be able to include, and hopefully will increase more accessibility into your games as you move forward in your career. That's basically what it really comes down to. Like, it's a journey. It's not a full-on end destination. Yes, The Last of Us Part 2 showed that it could be done. but it doesn't mean that the industry was ready for it. We still had to learn how to be able to do it before we actually were able to just implement it. So it's going to take a while, and unfortunately, it's taking a little bit longer than I think that probably some folks would want. But that's why I encourage you, developers, start with whatever you can. Start small, grow big. So anyway, again, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section down below. Appreciate it. That's all for me. Take care. Have yourself a great and wonderful day, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.